Language is energy as well. It's man-made, very divisive and inherently corrupt, but that's another story. It is actually energy, and I really want you to start to experiment with how you use that energy, to be a little bit more conscious of it. They say the words I am are the most powerful language or most powerful words that you can use, and to an extent that is true. There's a level of these being programming terms or language. Everything we do, it's programming our bodies, our perception, our human experience and the field around us. But some terms are like command prompts and I am is definitely one of them. It sort of helps us, and especially the false self and all layers of the false self or the ego, form what identity it is choosing to put on. Mostly not consciously, but anyway, I am does contribute to that. More powerful than that are the words I do not know. I've posted about this. The words I do not know are almost the most important, especially on a conscious spiritual journey, because they open you up to the possibilities of not blocking yourself from knowledge because you think you know, and therefore you have an idea cemented in your head, especially when we come to the bigger picture thinking and what the nature is of our existence and all those things that we tend to seek out. When you say I do not know, it is a statement of humility. It is putting your walls down and being more receptive to an answer, even if it's just out of frustration of, oh my God, I do not know how to do this anymore. Then those are the very same moments that you're likely to go and have a sleep, wake up, and all of a sudden have some amazing revelation as to what to actually do, simply because you use these terms. They are very profound words. I will add to what I've previously said about the words I am and say that the words I will are just as strong. The I am is the questioning and the openness. It is kind of like one of those command prompts, but more universally, so that it's not a case of necessarily being given the information you are seeking, although sometimes that does happen. There are other entities, not just gods and goddesses, interdimensional beings, and those that have never even been embodied, all sorts of helpers, your own spiritual team. Anyway, so that sort of sends a signal out of, okay, they're ready to receive some information. So even if it isn't necessarily unlocking from the inside, even though we are all the same energy and all that jazz, the words I will is like a statement to your body. And in hierarchy of what's important, I put those above the I am statement to your own body. When I say body, I'm not talking about the physical body. I'm talking about the multi-sheaths of your own system. The physical body is only one layer of that. So I started this little rant because I was thinking about language being an energy and wanted to clarify those couple things, but also to encourage you to really start critical thinking about language. And I know when I started my steps towards my awakening, even though it was a spontaneous awakening at the time, I developed a language for it afterwards. I had already spent almost 30 years in the occult world and was no stranger to profound and mystical experiences. I just didn't have the same language as we use in terms of spiritual awakening. I came to this moment where I was deeply aware of how corrupt language was, or not even necessarily language, but the way that we've used it, where we've lost meaning to some words, we've twisted the meaning to some words. This is a cultural thing, it's an evolutionary thing, it's over time, there's many reasons anyway. But I became aware of this from the words that I was saying. I was in my hermit phase of the spiritual awakening journey, and I'm posting soon on those phases, so make sure you're following me and keep an eye out for that one. But I would say something like, I love this, I love that, I love this thing, I love this person, and
carpet. I love desk. Brick, are you just looking at things in the office and saying that you love them?
I love lamp.
Do you really love the lamp, or are you just saying it because you saw it?
I love lamp. I love lamp.
And I would have that moment, I would have this mini pause and go, is this the right word? Do I really love them or appreciate this? I like this, but I don't love this thing. Things like, this blows my mind. Did it really blow your mind? Like, did your head just explode? In my case, yes. I have had things that have actually genuinely blown my mind, but it's the context that we use these words in, and these words can be taken a little bit too literally when we're putting this energy out there, when we're saying it's emotionally charged words that hold a bit more weight. It's said that when you say something, you're sending instructions out to the field, and that is true, especially when it comes to self-talk, which can tend to be a little bit more emotionally charged than just throwaway words that we often say. So without getting too deep into that little babble, I have found, and I've seen this in other people, that it is very common in awakenings to hit that stage of realizing just how much language doesn't fit. I remember saying to someone at the time, I feel like I'm speaking alien. That's something that I'd said for most of my life, if not out loud, then at least definitely in my head, was I felt like things that I was saying were constantly misunderstood, and to me, I couldn't say the things clear enough, but for some reason I felt like I was just speaking alien. The words just were landing differently, and it took me a long time to realize that a lot of this had to do with people's perception, their own experiences, the filter that they take all their information through. Definitely this critical thinking of all the words used definitely came online big time for me. I'll get more into that later. I'm sure you have your own experiences with that. Now I want you to consciously experiment with the power of these words, and both in setting your instructions out to the field, to yourself and your own beautiful multi-layered system, but also in your interactions with people. And I was brought back to this thought with interaction I've had very recently with one person. One subject has come up in conversation a couple times, and 2 times specifically, my response was pretty much exactly the same. It held the core messages exactly the same, and the wording was almost pretty much exactly the same, but the delivery was different. Remember, our words, the energy. So what you lead with into a conversation actually primes the conversation a lot. Language is only a tiny part of our feedback loop when we're actually in conversation with someone, communication with somebody. It's not just the physical act of speaking and then listening. It's all the other cues and micro expression, things that we don't say. Everything else there gives it away as well. When we are trying to get our point across, we will tend to, especially women do this, I'm not stereotyping, but it is a documented fact. And you will probably struggle to unhear this now. We tend to raise the pitch of our voice when we are either being flirtatious or trying to get an idea across, trying to get our way with something, more so even when we are trying to create a sense of security and comfort for another person, not feel like a threat. We have this raising of the pitch, and sometimes, especially when we're trying not to feel like a threat, a need dumbing down of the words we use. And if you are struggling to think about what I'm talking about, have a look at some videos on the dumb girl voice and the evolution of that. I've seen some really good ones. Definitely worth having a look at the psychology of that. I noticed this myself, even in some of my videos when I've tried to be a little bit more easily digestible to some people. My voice is actually higher. This is closer to my authentic voice. And when you find your authentic voice, you'll also realize that your authentic voice is what hits people. Will stop and listen to that compared to that voice that you put on to smooth the path. in line with that, backtracking to this conversation I'm talking about, the way that I'd primed, it was a conversation that was already happening. It wasn't like I was trying to instigate a conversation and propose an idea that I wasn't sure how it was going to go down and had to guide the conversation. That can fall under the term of, if you're really interested to look further, again, language being corrupt and a little bit misleading, look up things like dark psychology. So I wasn't trying to prime or guide the conversation. It was somebody talking to me, sharing their experience in a roundabout way, seeking advice for what they were experiencing. They wanted feedback, well, that's what they thought, but subconsciously what they wanted was validation. So when they said that they'd experienced X, Y, Z, I responded with what I knew straight up would be not as well received, in a gentle way, of course, but then continue to validate what they were feeling and kind of offer two sides to that story. Being a third party, I was hearing the bigger picture in the story I was being told, the personal bias that was very much coming into it, and the feelings attached to that, the other person's feelings, and then the way that that probably went down, and two very emotionally fueled people coming to heads. So when I first presented that disagreement and then agreement, it was like an instant roadblock in the conversation. I could see the mini shutdown in that person before that. Yeah, okay. Like, they received the validation, they're okay again, and the conversation slowly continued, and then it was like that piece was just absolutely glossed over. Not long after that, the exact same thing came up. I gave the exact same response, didn't change my tone or my language. I just switched around, and I knew in the moment what I was doing. I switched around the order. I delivered the harsh truth and the validation, so leading with the validation, and I got an instant agreement. There was no resistance in the conversation, and the energetic walls didn't go up. I say all this because I want you to start putting this into practice in your own conversations. I'm not asking you to change what you do for the sake of making your interactions easy. No, go out and make them hard if you want to, but be aware of the energy that you're putting out there. And here's another thing, I don't know if anybody has told you, and not everybody is going to be ready to hear this fact, but magic itself is inherently manipulative. You cannot get around that fact. Magic is manipulation. Manipulation is another one of those corrupt words. When someone says manipulation, we collectively have assigned a negative value to it. We don't want to be manipulated, and we have this real resistance to the word. But manipulation is not on its own a bad word. It's often the context that it's used and the implied meaning behind that. So many words can have meanings that change, and the implied meaning and intention behind it has a lot to do with how it's delivered, how it's received, I should say. So make a conversation easy, switch some things around. Don't change your core message. Do not change what your authentic truth is, but do be open to seeing other people's authentic truth, because they might be totally opposite, and that's okay too. To do any successful magic, when you're looking at actually making waves astrally and but making sure that your spells and rituals do actually work, you have to be hyper aware of this language piece, of the intentions behind it, of the emotions that you're putting out there, learning to manipulate those emotions and intentions and take advantage of them. What you can use to your best ability will be a big bonus in your toolkit. Like I said in my Sacred Rage video that rage can be a huge power source. From an occult perspective, it absolutely can. And I use it often. But I am the very last person in the world that, if you know me in real life, you will think of as being angry and a rage head. Maybe a previous me, well, definitely a previous me, my head exploded because I was so full of rage, but I had nothing to do, no understanding of how to channel it other than to feel it, other than to sink into it, other than to project it, because I was hurting. Now I'm just going to unleash, and unleash I did. So anyway, language. Lesson for the day. Language is energy, just like anything else. It's all energy, it's all consciousness, and you need to be conscious of it. This is a journey of radical self-awareness. Take from this what you will and go and use it responsibly. With great power, there is great responsibility. So when you start to become hyper aware of language, and that it is only a very, very tiny part of our connection and communication with people, but something that, just like any of your ritual tools, can be used to manipulate and to prime a situation or to guide a conversation, then you have a responsibility of making sure that you do not use that unconsciously and to the detriment of yourself and other people. You have no right to try and manipulate another person's will or thoughts or feelings on a matter. But you do have a huge responsibility to understand your own, to be authentic to that, and to disagree with something. If you don't agree with it, that doesn't have to be making a big statement. That can be quietly. That can be choosing to shut your mouth and not give any more away, not because you want to be the better person, but because you no longer want to give energy into a situation. Maybe because you just recognize that that energy vampire has gone around in loops and is only trying to use you as a power source to get the next little piece of energy. You have to be very aware and in turn very guarded without needing to walk around on guard like everybody is out to get you. You just have a responsibility. So go out and experiment with it. Let me know how you go, and I would really love to hear your thoughts. So until next time, blessed be.